Good morning. Happy Tuesday. There was no Monday message yesterday because I was working on my predictions for 2021, and I just wanted to make sure I did it in a good way for you guys and not rush it out the door. So Monday messages will continue next week. A quick announcement. I'm going to be doing a winter solstice meditation and group get together. That will happen on the 21st. It's going to be free. And we'll run through a meditation where we clean out the energy of 2020 and create fertile space for 2021 to come in and sit in our energy. And after we do the meditation, we will transform it into more of a gathering where I would love to hear from any and all of you about your reflections on 2020 and your intentions for 2021. I kind of really want it to be a community, but we want to start with setting the energy and the winter solstice. I've done this quite a few times. It's really one of my favorite group interactions. It's really quite beautiful. So if it's not in the newsletter this week, it'll be next week, okay? But just think December 21st and we'll make that happen. Okay, so let's get into it with 2021. But let me preface that with a reflection on 2020 and my predictions for 2021. Or 2020, excuse me. So I like to name years things because I notice they tend to take a theme. And it's funny because I write these things and I'm in the present moment, and sometimes I forget what I've written because I write it, I put it out there, and it is what it is. But the title for 2020 was Raging Fires and Roaring Rivers. Raging Fires and Roaring Rivers. Yeah. And of course, we started out the year in Australia with raging fires. But, you know, I speak so much more in metaphor most of the time. Not that I don't predict specific events, but 2020, depending on your perspective, really was a year of expansion. Now, it depends on how you measure expansion. And let's start first with the story I seem to be telling a lot these last couple of weeks to folks. And it goes like this. There were two kids raised by the same parent who was an alcoholic. And as they came into adulthood, one of the children became an alcoholic and the other did not. And when asked by outsiders, they asked the alcoholic, "Why did you become an alcoholic?" And the person said, "Well, look at my parent. How could I not?" And then the other person who was not an alcoholic asked the same question, "How did you not become an alcoholic?" And they say, "Look at my parent. How could I not?" So the point of that is how we choose to look at things and how we digest the experiences that we have. Now, the way I've digested 2020 is that it has been a massively expansive year, certainly for me. I can't remember a year when there's been more expansion. And let's talk first on the quantum physics level. Any of you quantum physics students or law of attraction enthusiasts know that thought and perception precedes matter. So there you have it. We've been working the internal levels. That's what precedes external manifestations. So human beings by nature, we don't move, we don't shift unless we're pressed. We don't move, we don't shift, we don't change unless we're forced to do so. I mean, and I would challenge you, and you can comment and email me if you like, but I'd be very curious to hear if any of you, in your own personal experience, in your life, if you actually grew, changed, or did something when you were feeling fantastic. Because when we're feeling fantastic, or life is real status quo, this is okay, why would we want to change that? I think it's human nature when things are going well to just be there. Let's see if we can make this happen for a while. It isn't until we're agitated, fearful, uncomfortable, or worried that we try and grow around it. We try and do something. So I really look at 2020 as a year that forced us to go inward. You didn't have a chance. You didn't have a choice. For many people, quarantine, you were locked up inside your homes, couldn't go out to restaurants, bars, movie theaters, sporting events. You couldn't socialize. Many people, their incomes were taken away or significantly reduced. And, you're with yourself. And depending on what your relationship is like to yourself and external reality would determine your level of comfort or discomfort. And, some of the things I learned in 2020 were really, my awareness really became crystal clear on the amount of propaganda that exists in culture. And it isn't that I wasn't aware before, but again, when dramatic situations occur, it forces us to begin to see things differently. And, I will forever, well, not forever, never say never, right? I'm not going to watch the news anymore, with rare exception. I stay up on current events because people ask me about them. I probably wouldn't if it wasn't part of my job to make commentary on occasion on some elements of culture. But the level of agenda that exists out there is just really sad, that this is what we've devolved into. But that's only one piece of what happened to me in terms of looking at 2020. My own personal world expanded because of my own shifts in awareness, my own shifts about resistance, my own shifts about how abundance is created. And I've been doing abundance work for 13, 14 years at this point. So it's really exciting to me that there's always more chapters to be revealed. And I think when we're hitting up against hard energy, when we're hitting up against that thing that code we can't quite seem to crack, that is the best time ever. Why? Because that means we're on the precipice of learning something new. That means we're next to a shift. If we don't give up and we keep pushing out on the constraints of our reality and saying there's got to be more always comes in. And it's really only to the degree we identify with the difficult moment we're in that it makes it harder to shift, or the shift feels more difficult. And this is why I speak so much about surrendering to the present moment and learning how to trust. Eckhart Tolle would say, get comfortable with not knowing. That's so hard for many of us, to just say, well, life has always worked out before. Why is it going to stop now? I'm just going to relax into it. And that actually assists the process. Now, look, this doesn't mean that expansion isn't difficult. It doesn't mean it's easy. And I don't want to diminish anyone's experience of difficulty. Because expansion is difficult. And I love the analogies of working out with weights or working out at the gym or something, because it's work. And if you want to get those, cut muscles and you want to feel strong and be powerful, it takes what it takes, and you got to put in the time and effort. And energetically, we have to build the energy in our space to realize outcomes that we envision for ourselves. It's not just snap your fingers. It's not magic. It's energetic, and you have to learn how to work with energy. So 2020 has given us the most tremendous opportunities to work with our energies and to challenge our limiting beliefs. And so even though this has been crazy times in terms of how typical society operates, it's been remarkable for the inner world. And as we move into 2020, I know with 100% certainty that everyone is going to get a boost of some sort. Well, I don't want to say everyone. Those who have done their best to stay present with the energies that have been flooding in. some people don't see the value of, pushing out and trying to see a reason and a purpose. There's just a section of people who are like, yeah, whatever. But those of you who are conscious and want to pay attention to those levels, you're going to see the other side of the coin of 2020 and 2021. So let's get into it. I got to put my glasses on for this. All right, here we go. So 2021, I'm calling this the return to the new normal, meaning that the normal we used to know ain't no more. We aren't going to get that anymore. What used to be is gone. And that's a good thing. We don't want what used to be. And 2020 is softer and more somber. I think there's more empathy in general in the population, but there is a reorganization that's happening in 2021. And even though there's a climate of urgency to return to, it's really to get out of pandemic mode, there's also a carefulness. Is carefulness a word? I don't even know if that's a word. There is a cautious approach toward this re-entry in the organization. And I think people have been so traumatized, People have been traumatized by 2020. And it takes time to even have the chutzpah or the stamina, the courage, and even the desire to embrace in any rapid way. So it's like any trauma, we may have a desire to receive and to move forward, but we're so fearful of re-traumatizing ourselves that we have to move slowly. And I think people are going to find that even though good news continues to come about, that it doesn't come into our being as quickly as we would like. It's almost like we don't trust it. And you know what? We can thank the news media for that. We can thank the news media for that. Let's put that right smack dab where it belongs. And let's face it, our government failed us. Government is full of flawed human beings. We're all flawed. And this situation came about and it was handled as bad as it could possibly be handled. So, it is what it is. We're dealing with human beings. But all of these factors really increase the trauma and also lessens the speed of our reorganization, our recovery. But we are recovering, we are reorganizing. And as we start here in December, I see the first vaccines coming out at the end of December. We don't have to wait till January, we're seeing it already, it's coming out. And then it really just becomes more of a logistical process of how do we distribute to millions and millions and millions. So, and I also, I've been talking about this actually for 3 or 4 months, but it's just the awareness of the vaccine, whether you're getting it or not, just knowing that it's out there and it's one piece of the puzzle of normalizing our lives, it relaxes folks. It's like, oh, I can exhale. And that's very important. So as we move into 2021, and I'm going to focus on pandemic first and then move into the other elements. As we enter January, I think there's an overall sense of the problems that we have almost feel insurmountable on a personal, on a national, on a global level. Even though we're ready for 2020 to be gone and we hear about the vaccine, we've been carrying burdens for so long over this year, 2020, that we come into the year feeling like maybe we can't get our arms around it. Not true. That's how we feel, but we actually are getting our arms around the economy, the health issues, the challenges in the political arena, the challenges in our own lives, which are real, whether it's financial, professional, personal, health, our arms are coming around, but there is a collective arms coming around. You see me continuing. This is the vision I was looking at. And so that makes it feel somewhat somber, even though we're happy and we're looking forward to the next few months as they promise and provide relief. It still feels like somewhat of a monumental task. And I would say most of that is really fatigue. I want to address energetically the vaccine itself. And I look at the energy, and I'm not a scientist. I don't proclaim to be, but I am an energy reader of pretty high caliber. I think I do a good job more often than not. I trust what I see. But there's been a lot of concern that the vaccine is going to implant a chip in us, or it's going to change the structure of our DNA, the way that how this vaccine was created. When I look at the vaccine itself, there is not a concern. You don't have to get it. I mean, I'm not encouraging you to get it. I don't have an investment in whether you get to take the vaccine or not. But I really want to address the fear that's going around. I can't take that vaccine because they're going to now track me, or so. That's just not true. Now, 25, 30 years down the road, if we don't change our relationship to health care, something like that may be in the works. So maybe some people, those fears, they are perceiving something in future time, but it's certainly not now. The other piece is, I'm going to jump around just a moment, is that by end of 2021, we will be on the path to, let's call it socialized, but we will be on the path to healthcare for all at a reduced price or a free price. It's already written in the blueprint of the US of A. So, you know, I don't have a political commentary to make about that. I don't really care about the political commentary. I care about human beings. And we've moved out of the Piscean age in January of 2020. We're going into the Aquarian Age of Humanitarian. It's just unstoppable. You know, the humanitarian is going to take charge. And as human beings begin to work with that energy, certain things will work beautifully and certain things will not. And certain things will trigger some people and certain things will not. But know that healthcare by the end of 2021 for everyone is going to be in place, and it's going to be on the path for a different way we get healthcare in the country. And this is important because we haven't seen the last of superbugs. This is the beginning of superbugs. So, and then we're going to continue to see the frailty of antibiotic treatment, that they just become less and less effective. And so this focus as we move forward really has to be on prevention, has to be on strong immune system, and cleaning up the planet, quite frankly. You know, we're creating a lot of environments that foster disease and superbugs. And that plays into the 25, 30 year scenario about why tracking or any of that may be important. But overall, my message is really to take responsibility for your own wellness as much as you possibly can. So anyhow, back to, as we move into 2021, people are calmer. And even though the news media really wants to go crazy about divisiveness and how much Democrats hate Republicans and vice versa, that's mainly people in Washington. I think they hate each other. They're power hungry, and you know, I have nothing positive to say about anybody in Washington, so I'm not going to say anything. But it's basically a big fat lie in terms of, I mean, there's always fringe elements, but as we move into 2021 and the healing of a nation, and I'm speaking pandemic, begins to take place, I think we're going to see softer elements of culture. People are ready, just in general, to put down the fight. Not everybody. There's always a percentage on either side. But overall, I think as you head outdoors, you're going to find it to be less aggressive, less antagonistic, if you've experienced that. And I think people are really done with vitriol in general. All right, so I believe I'm going to finish up with pandemic and move on to other things. I do feel like we're going to really see in the month of March, early April, the effects of the 2020 economy and the pandemic economy. I think we're going to have a big hit in March, but then at the end of the first quarter. But then it will come back and we will regroup. It's not a permanent crash or a permanent a state of being. It's more of a call to action, and to make sure that whatever the government has been doing or considering doing, that they keep the heat up on that. Because as I look toward the financial pattern for the rest of the year, it's definitely up and down. But as we get to this time, December-ish, 2021, we've made it through the storm. It's like it took the whole year, but things are finally familiar again. We finally feel like we can count on certain systems or certain processes, and the levels of fear and concern have really significantly decreased. And that doesn't mean you have to wait till December for that to happen. It means that it's a progression, that there's stops and starts and hills and valleys to this progression, but overall, we hit a new threshold by about December of next year. And so it's a complex year, but everyone overall is going to do better. Okay, the last part of politics, and you hear me sigh because I just hate talking about this stuff. I do it because many of you ask me about it, but my point of view, not only with politicians, but with celebrities, is that these are people living out their karma on a grand stage. That has nothing to do with us. And unless you're an activist, feet on the ground, in the trenches, working, it's got nothing to do with us. And the most we can ever do is aspire to put energy into the principles we hold dear in terms of love and peace and humanitarianism and cooperation. That's the best we can do. And when we expend our energy in the identification with people in public purview, we really disempower ourselves. So to me, it's like, it's theater. Okay, so let's talk about, the shit show on display in the United States of America. So people keep asking me, what's going to happen to Trump? Is he going to jail? Is he whatever, what's going to happen? Yeah. First and foremost, I think the gift of President Trump is that he has lulled people out of complacency. I mean, it's really quite remarkable when you look at an election where most of the time, what was it last year, last election, 120, 130 million people voted, and this time to have 150 million vote. I mean, that's really pretty remarkable. And I think everyone owes that debt of gratitude to President Trump, because but for his personality type and the way he governs and his ideologies, people wouldn't have woken up and said, oh, I guess I need to participate, right? The other thing is, what I feel about President Trump is he's tired. Now, this is a person who has unstoppable will. He has the will. We'd be hard pressed to find anybody with the kind of will this individual possesses. However he dispenses that is, for your judgment, but he does have an unstoppable will. That being said, his physical persona, his physical body, I can feel the fatigue in his body. And I think especially in his management of the presidential election on his way out, he went counterclockwise. I think he had a good thing going for himself, but then he went counterclockwise. And when you start to go counterclockwise, meaning against what is benevolent for culture, and then I think it becomes just completely self-serving. That becomes, it's sort of like something that sucks you into it. Those are the types of energies when people get ill, they've been doing counterclockwise work. anyhow, not across the board, but that's what I'm looking at in the pattern. So I'm expecting within a couple of years, I think President Trump will be out of the limelight for the most part, and his will is lessening. And I do think he's going to have some minor health considerations in the summer and then again at the end of the year. But he's so private about um, his personal world in that regard. We may not hear about it, but even though he's fighting tooth and nail to stay in the White House, I think he's going to be extraordinarily relieved to be out of the White House. And, you know, it's that thing when you let your will take forward as opposed to your natural flow of energy. And I think that's the schism he finds himself in. I do think he has a mountain of legal issues that are coming about, and it's nonstop. It's just nonstop. He has been a fighter his whole life, and just that's the way it goes. And he elevated himself to the highest office on the planet, and everybody and their cousin is coming after him for right reasons, for wrong reasons, for any reason. So I think he's going to be mired down in legal challenges for some time. I highly doubt he will go to jail. I just can't see it. I put him in jail and go, does that fit? No, he pops right back out. I'm sure there's sanctions of some sort, but he's certainly a master at procrastinating and putting those sanctions off. And he does have a loyal base of people who really, really love him. They really like what he is about. And so I think he has that well wishes in his arena for some time. I do believe he's going to spend a good deal of time out of the country. I just think there's other places in the world where he can exist and have a bit more normalcy. So that's what I have to say about that. Oh, okay, let's move into other areas. Can we be done with pandemic and politics? All right. So 2021 is a year of recovery, gentler flow of energy. It's the most fantastic year for love. Holy crap. What is so amazing to me is I think it's the combination of this more subdued approach toward life and sort of wait and see rather than this aggressive go after that typically defines American spirit. But it's also, there's a benevolence that's blanketing the planet. It's like the after effects of all this challenging energy we've been in 2020. It's the universe, the planet's way of healing itself. So we tend to think it's just us here on the rock, but you know, the planet has its own vibratory healing ability, and consciousness at large has its own ability to produce benevolence. And you know, that was one of the modules we worked with in the magnetism course, is that we live in an intelligent reality, that there are communities feeding us and sending us loving energy. And I think we're going to feel that in substantial ways in 2021. And how that translates is improved relationships, new relationships. My cat's meowing. If you could be getting married, lots of marriages, lots and lots of marriages in 2020. If you get divorced, you're going to get into another one right away. I think 2021 is the year of love. It just simply is. And after quarantine and online dating and all the constraints that came about in people are going to be out mingling and having a good time, all right, and making connection. And it's tribal. We're supposed to be with each other. It's not normal to not be with one another. So we're sort of catapulted into this pool of benevolence. Oh, sorry. One last thing on the pandemic. Masks are here to stay. Don't think just because that, you know, and you think over in China, they've been wearing masks for years, way before pandemic. And it's just been a cultural thing to be polite and not spread disease or, you know, germs. And I think our country is going to follow suit, not to the degree China has, but you know, there's going to be people who have been so traumatized by 2020, it'll be hard for them to not wear a mask, even post-vaccination. So just masks are something new. It's a new fashion accessory. Okay. Okay, now we can be done with all of it. Let's move into some tech stuff. So automation has been the latest thing, certainly in businesses like mine, where you don't want to have to do everything yourself. So you put it in a funnel and let the automation do what it wants to do. But this is becoming even more sophisticated and in companies of greater magnitude. So for example, I get on the phone, I want to call AT&T about a phone, and it takes me, 14 voice prompts to finally get to a customer service agent. And then the voice prompt misunderstands what you're saying, or you have to, there's going to be more and more and more of that. And so you'll find in 2021, especially as these new technologies are becoming more sophisticated and more prevalent, that you as a consumer, you have to be even more savvy. You're dealing with an unintuitive system that makes life more difficult for you. So I think we're going to see that in 2021 more than ever, and in different types of companies, not just related to phones, but you call up your doctor's office. I noticed I had an appointment with my doctor. Just to get a person on the phone is a challenging thing. And then everything comes, you have to follow this link that comes to you through text, and then you have to put your birth date in. There's no more just calling people up and saying, hello, can I talk to you for fun? Yeah, that's unfortunately, that nicety is diminishing. The flip side to this coin of automation, and companies are trying to up-level their productivity, is hackers, thieves, catfish, crooks. They're getting smarter than ever. And the technology related to that is improving exponentially greater. And so if you have not been scammed or a victim or been catfished or any of that, this is the year it can happen, because the hackers are getting a little bit of an edge on the security people. So security really is going to have to hunker down. And I think that will come about in the summer, but it's just getting more, you got to take care of yourself. You have to educate yourself about certain technologies, or you could fall victim of certain crooks and scammers, and it's coming out in full force. Now, one of the big positives of 2021, it starts around April, May, is there is going to be an enormous influx of job creation. And I don't know if this is related to the administration. I might sneeze, but maybe it's infrastructure, maybe it's something related to green. I don't know, but there's an enormous amount of jobs coming forward in 2021. So anybody who wants a job, you're going to be able to get one. And I have a sense it's coming from the government, but they're jobs, of all kinds, good paying jobs, not so good paying jobs, but people are going to have more work and more things to do than before. Pardon me. Excuse me. I knew I was going to sneeze. Let's see. As well, looking at the job market, companies who are just ready, who've been at half-mast and are ready to catapult back into market share, you're going to see incredible deals for consumers. And so it's a great consumer year, and it's a great employment year. And so as you get to 2022, we're really going to be back on top of the mountain again. Climate change, yep, it's real. It's still happening. Cooler temperatures in the north, hotter temperatures in the south, floods, hurricanes. In November of 2021, I'm feeling an earthquake, a sizable proportion in California. I haven't felt that before. And California, if for those of you who are not in the West Coast or in other parts of the world, California has earthquakes all the time. And every other day, you don't always feel them, or you get used to them. But this is something that will have some significant damage. It feels like it's between Fresno and what's that beautiful town, Santa Barbara. So that's a big span, but it's in a different place than what we would anticipate, but we'll look for that. Well, not look for it, but I'm expecting that in November. All right, let's move into Hollywood, which is just a strange time for Hollywood, of course. And Hollywood has been on in a transformation since the Me Too movement, of course, and it's going to continue to transform for the next 4 or 5 years into its new identity. It takes some time because there's people who don't want to let go of what it was, and people want it to be something it can't quite be yet, and they'll meet in the middle at some point here. But it is a big, it's called ethnic year, minority year in Hollywood at the Oscars. That's my feeling. Just people of color getting recognition. And finally, and so who's coming into my space is Spike Lee. I don't know if he has a movie or anything out, but he's coming up really largely in my energy. I'm also seeing Asian representation again. Lee Isaac Chung is coming up in the energy. And then in terms of Oscar recipients, or certainly nominees, I'm getting, again, African American, Chadwick Boseman, and Zendaya. So, you know, I think this is a call to recognize difference and to appreciate work from outside of the culture, outside of the clique. So, you know, and it's a weird time for movies. It's a weird time for Hollywood. So it just kind of is what it is. Finally, 2021 is a year you can accomplish professionally, personally, and physically. Health can improve, your money can improve, your love life can improve. It doesn't mean you don't keep showing up and doing the work of doing you in the world, but make no mistake, even though we have a somber beginning, and there's a few bumps at the first quarter of the year, and you know we're reorganizing. You know, overall, when we get to this time in 2021, we'll be able to reflect on it and say, "Wow, we did it. We really made it back to full steam ahead." And so I really like 2021, and I encourage you to look at the energy from an abundant perspective, not a lack perspective. Life is always serving us. And if we look at it through that lens, look at what it's giving to us, not what it's taking from us. That really is the magic key that unlocks a joyful life. And a reflection on my 2020 predictions, last year this time I did predict that Joe Biden would win. I did predict that it would be Kamala Harris or Stacey Abrams, and it was indeed Kamala Harris. And I looked at the other predictions and they were all just typical stuff, that most of it has come to pass. And I think it's really in your perception of how, if it was raging rivers and roaring fires. Certainly there were some roaring fires and raging rivers, and you know, this pandemic did rage through our lives, and from my point of view, mostly through how it was handled. Anyhow, 2021, I like it. You'll like it. It's a feel better year, and I hope this information is helpful to you. I'll be back with Monday messages next week. Feel free to comment anything you like. It's all good. And remind you on the 21st, the winter solstice event, and it'll be Zoom, of course. But you know, I can handle up to 100 people on Zoom pretty easily, so everybody's welcome. All right, have a good day. Talk to you.